Well, I thought it was time for another fountain pen shootout. And I thought what we would do today is have a quick look at these two pens. I happen to have borrowed this pen from my main man Murray. This is the Armando Simoni Club Bologna Medio. And then on top here is the Armando Simoni Club Bologna Extra. This pen was launched in 2017, I believe, and it's big, it's heavy, it's long, and not everybody likes that size. So Manu came up with the idea, that's the owner of the company, of making a Medio, a more medium-sized pen. Now, to give you an idea of the size of these pens, here we have a Pilot Metropolitan. So as you can see, the Medio is a bit girthier, but is about that size, whereas the Extra is much bigger. I've done separate reviews of these two pens, so I don't want to cover all the parts, but I do want to point out a couple of pertinent differences. So obviously there's the size. Yeah, the Extra is brass lined, which gives it quite a bit of weight. Both of these particular finishes are celluloid. The Medio does not have a brass liner, but it does have, I'm just going to unscrew this, it does have a piston filler that is a lot of metal, so it still has, as you can maybe see here, metal, right? It still has quite a bit of weight to it. I happen to be able to unscrew mine, so I can show you. Here is the brass in the Extra. There is a bit more brass in there, and altogether that makes for a fairly heavy pen. So that is one important difference. Now, another difference is the finials. This Medio has a medallion on the finial which says Armando Simoni Club ASC, and the Extra, and the Extra here does not have that. We have two clips, equal size, looks very small on the Extra, looks a bit more proportionate, still smallish, but proportionate on the Medio. That's another big difference. Now, the Extra has a medallion here, not on top of the cap. It has a medallion right there on the, sorry, not on top of the cap, but it does have a medallion on the cap. Both of these have a Greek key center band, but one thing I really like about the Medio is that it has a metal ring at the cap lip to make sure it won't crack. The Extra does not have that. I'll just unscrew it so you can actually see the cap better. As you can see, there's a big center band, but this lip is exposed celluloid, and it's fairly thin, so you have to be a little careful with that. A big difference that I have already alluded to is the filling system. I've shown you the filling system on the Medio. On the on the Bologna Extra, it's actually the compressor system, which means you unscrew this end, you pull out a hollow tube, there's a hole in here, which you cover with a finger, push it back in, that compresses the air inside, that compresses a sac inside, and with that pen and a bottle of ink, when you then let go of that little hole, air rushes in again, the sac expands, and it sucks up ink. Quite a cool system, a couple of moving parts, but the sacs are fairly easy to replace. So it's not a big deal if that at some point springs a leak or something. One more big difference that I wanted to point out regards the nibs. So nibs and feeds, actually. You see the sections are somewhat similar. You have something that tapers down, flares out a little bit. You have threads there. The Extra has a larger band on the section that the Medio does not have. It just has a thinner band. But one big difference is the nib. I think both of these are Magic Flex, although the one on the Medio is not labeled Magic Flex. It did say Magic Flex on the website, and it does have some flexibility. Obviously this is rhodium trim and this is rose gold trim, but I mean beyond that, it's a number 8 nib on the Extra and a number 6 nib on the Medio. What is really different to me is the feeds. As you can see, the Extra has this very bulky, round feed, and the Medio has something that looks more like an Omas feed, which is a lot flatter. The nice thing, one thing that I've always really enjoyed about my Extra, is that this feed, I don't know how well you can see that, I'll try to zoom in, but it's a little hard for the camera to pick up. Oh no, there we go. You can see that, give me a pointing device. You can see that right here is a line, and that line can actually, it's a separate, more or less separate part. When you flex the nib, that kind of pushes up, and it stays, make sure that the feed stays connected to the nib, and as a result you get less railroading. Okay, so the final thing I want to show you is the size in hand. The Medio is a very good size that I think works well for a lot of people, and again, it's heavier than it looks like because of the metal inside. You can sort of post this pen. It seems to be a little wobbly, but sort of post this pen. Then you have a really nice size, but even unposted, I think it works for a lot of people. The Extra does not post, but it is considerably larger, right? This is a very large, bulky pen with, again, quite a lot of weight. Now I think that the final comparison should be in the writing sample. So let's try to do this side by side. I'll zoom in a little bit. Let's start with the Medio. So here we have an ASC, sorry, it's not an Ogiva, sorry, Bologna Medio. The ink is Ackermann Delft's Blauw in both pens. Nice writer, pretty smooth. Ebonite feed, good ink flow. And as to line variation, this is what you have. And as you can see, I'm a little careful here because this is not my pen. And again, it doesn't say Magic Flex anywhere, but I'm pretty sure this is, we would call this at least semi-flex, because this is more line variation than you would get out of a standard gold nib. So that is really nice. Also has reasonable snapback, so that looks pretty good. Then we have the ASC. Sorry for the bad handwriting, but my fingers resting on these rings. I find this particular nib has a little bit more feedback. It seems to be a little bit more saturated because the ink is a little darker. And this nib, too, offers a nice amount of line variation. And if we want to do this again, we can. I've had a lot of fun with this nib. So then the question is, which one would you pick? Well, these extras go for $1,200, $1,300, and the Medios go for less. I am just looking back at my notes. Of course, it's always where you don't expect it. These go for $745, this particular finish. Arco is always expensive, right? But even the quote-unquote less desirable, they're still desirable, but less desirable finishes than Arco are still expensive. It's a big pen. So if price is the only thing you care about, then surely the Medio is a better deal, because it is definitely cheaper. Beyond that, I would really ask myself how you want to use it. First of all, if you have smaller hands, the Extra is probably too much for you. I've given this to a number of people with smaller hands. They don't like it. They tend to not like it. It's too big. It's too heavy. They don't like it. So that's a simple, easy thing to fix. Smaller hands, probably not the Extra. If you have larger hands, I still find the Medio very comfortable, and because of the weight of that piston filling mechanism, it's really quite nice to use. I don't find this unpleasant, too light, or uncomfortable in any way. I really, really like that. It's very, very comfortable, and again, it's a size that works for a lot of people. It's certainly more economical. So then I think there's two more considerations. One is the filling system. Do you want something exotic? Well, then you should probably get an extra. If you want something a little bit more common, well, the Medio just has a piston filler. Probably a little easier to clean. It can be a little finicky to use that a compressor system. Again, fairly easy to repair, but still, it's a little bit more finicky. The final consideration for me would be, how do you want to use it? If it is a matter of, I really want to do a lot of fancy-ish writing like this, clearly both pens can do it, but don't forget that the Extra has an actual feed that is modified to be able to do that sort of stuff more easily. So if that is what you really care about, I think the Extra is nicer. If you want to do normal writing with a little bit of a flourish here and there, the Medio is probably fine. So it really comes down to your personal preferences and what you want to get out of a pen. And that's really all there is to it. I thought I would just do this shootout because I had the Medio I borrowed from Murray. I thought it would be a missed opportunity to not show the two pens side by side. I hope this was useful. I hope this has given you insight in which of the two you might want to get if you were considering them. And that's all there is to it. Kind thank you to Murray for lending me the pen. And I'll gladly see you later. Bye-bye.